Hello, hello, hello. Welcome back. This is the Full Out Healing Show and Podcast, and I'm Sable, your host. Now, in every episode, I talk about and this is a show about my healing journey as a survivor. Now, in every episode, I talk about something that used to have a lot of shame wrapped around it for me, and I dig into what were the thoughts, feelings, beliefs, and narratives around that topic that kind of related to that shame, how I'm relating to it today, and then what I hope and desire for the future as it relates to the thing that used to bring up a lot of shame for me, and maybe possibly still, because, healing is linear. So this is episode 18. This is 100 Days of Truth. I want to say, 22 or 23. I'm not exactly sure, but it'll be in the show notes. And today's episode is called I Underestimated the Role Safety Played in My Ability to Thrive. And I'm actually really excited to talk about this because I didn't really understand how shame was wrapped up in this until very recently. Okay, so digging into the thoughts, feelings, narratives, and beliefs that kind of were a part of the shame that I used to feel around this. So what I used to think is, whenever I had unmet goals, that I'm lazy and I'm so disappointing. I would ask myself, one thought I had is gosh, Sable, why do I self-sabotage? Why do you keep self-sabotaging yourself? Why can't you commit and follow through? Another thought I would have is, wow, I could just make my life so much better if I could just get out of bed, if I just went to sleep early, if I just committed and followed through to anything. I also used to think that it's really scary to follow through. And I just remember feeling like a wall. I would see very clearly, well, it's time to send this email. It's time to do this. It's time to do that. And I would just freeze. And so I was very conscious of those moments, those ideal moments and those ideal opportunities to do the follow through, and they would just walk by. And then I would think to myself, wow, because I didn't do this, so-and-so hates me. And not only that, because I didn't do this, this opportunity is gone and I've screwed myself over yet again. Okay? Those were all the thoughts I used to have around this. And I think I'm going to connect to how this relates to safety when I get to the present tense, okay? So all of these thoughts used to make me feel overwhelmed. I felt incredibly disappointed in myself. And I also honestly felt distrustful of myself. I thought that I needed to earn rest. I thought that I needed to earn joy, right? Because I can't trust myself. I need to earn these things. Otherwise, I will, if I have any joy, then I'll never get anything done. If I have any rest, then I'll never get anything done. And this is the only way to make myself to do those things. Spoiler alert, that didn't work, but it's just, I distrusted myself and started to really restrict and withhold things from myself because I distrusted myself. I just felt really frustrated with myself. I was just, tired of my own damn self. I was just really frustrated with myself. And to some extent, I felt a little bit confused, which, I had an episode on how confusion isn't real. You could check that out. And but I felt confused because I noticed this duality within me. I noticed that I felt really hopeful and I really believed in myself and the vision I had for the world. And I knew that I could be the one to absolutely do it, you know? And not only could be the one, I knew that I was the one meant to bring into the world what I feel so driven to create. And yet at the same time, I just felt so doomed. I could see, I really think visioning is, well, have always known having a vision is one of my strengths. It's in my personal life and professionally. You know, I'm really good at supporting people, at having visions grander than what they perceive as possible, and then backwards planning how to get there. And even though I had that gift, I still felt so doomed because I just didn't know, like, how can I get to that vision? How can I make it? How will I ever get to that future? Right? It always, it felt so bright and so real, and I could see it and almost touch it. And yet I felt like I was in a cloud of doom, and I didn't know it was doom. And even though I felt hopeful, this fog over me felt incredibly hopeless. And I just didn't understand what in the present could lead me to there, like beyond like the actual action steps or a project management plan. But I think it was because I just felt so overwhelmed with, and this wasn't conscious, but like I felt overwhelmed by the violence. I felt overwhelmed and hopeless around my time because it was, not only was it so unpredictable, but I also felt like it was so draining that even though like an incident would take it would take, you know, it would happen over the course of like several hours or an entire night. It always took me days and weeks to recover. And I would just feel like shit about myself during that recovery time and feel frustrated with myself and my to-do list during that recovery time. I didn't recognize it as recovery time back then. And I think that was part of the reason why I felt hopeless and doomed and unsure about how I would get there, because I just felt so disappointed in myself for having so many plans that always fell through. And I just, there was a sense of like, I just felt like a lack of control over my time and energy because I created these ambitious plans, or what felt ambitious at the time. And then there was a part of me that was like, well, I kind of knew that I had an idea like, well, what if I just don't have the energy? What if, you know, she has a blow up, quote unquote? And I just knew my plans would be wrecked. And then I also felt guilty because, and I like felt ashamed and like lower myself when I was trying to create goals, because I was like, I used to be able to do so much, but now I can't. And so it felt almost like a giving up when I tried to make my goals smaller, to match what my capacity was. But there was something about it that just felt like it wasn't on my terms, and spoiler alert, wasn't, but I couldn't put my finger on it, but I just felt so defeated when I had to, you know, adjust my goals and adjust my plans, you know? So a narrative that existed within the context of the abusive relationship around this was, well, it's the man and it's the system and this oppressive, racist, sexist, homophobic world that is keeping me down. And that's why it's so hard to keep to a goal, to commit to anything. Like, that's what's going on. Excuse me. That was sort of how, that was a narrative that existed in the relationship. I think when I, disclosed some of my feelings of hopelessness, I think my ex-wife, under the guise of like being compassionate and understanding, kind of offered and like really upheld this narrative. Like, well, you're trying your best because the system sucks and there's only so much you can do in a shitty world. And I believe in you and the world is shit. So be kind to yourself. And at the time I was like, wow, I guess that's being like so compassionate. She's more compassionate to me than I was being to me. And that's kind of what I told myself about it at the time. And it did seem like that based off of that narrative, you know? And then the beliefs that I held that also really allowed this narrative to kind of have legs is, things are hard in this world for someone like me. Someone like me, insert, dark skin, black, queer woman, you know, growing up poor. Like those are the things. Yeah, I just believed that things are hard for me because of the essence of who I am and where I came from. I also believed that, wow, the outcomes that I can produce, like the outcomes that are happening that are not making me happy are like, this is proof of all the isms at work, you know? This is racism, this is homophobia, this is all of these things. All of my outcomes are because of these greater systems. I also believe that, wow, everyone is so fill in the blank ism for not believing and investing in me. Like, everyone in every institution, like basically the no's and the rejections, particularly around my efforts with my business. Well, like when I was applying for jobs and then like when I transitioned to my business, like I just took every rejection as proof that that reinforced this other idea in the narrative. Like, wow, that's so racist, that's so homophobic, that's so sexist, that's so this, that, and the other, you know? And it just felt like really demoralizing, and it was just like hard to persist, right? And which I would judge myself for like needing a break from how hard it all is. Now, how I think about this today, totally different. The thoughts, feelings, and narratives and beliefs I have around like all of these struggles, it's totally related to what I understand about safety today. Okay, so first let me start with my thoughts about it. Now, when I have an unmet goal, instead of like the character judgment of I'm lazy and disappointed, I think, what did I learn about myself? What did I learn about my needs? Is this the right goal? I also think, I experienced this incredibly extraordinary challenge, and that had an effect on me because I'm human, and that is okay. This is really huge thought to think, because I look back at my life and I realize I was just kind of like fielding traumas left and right and not really taking stock or noticing it or really treating it as business as usual, and then would really judge myself for having my capacity as a human being be affected. And I see that now, and because I see that now, instead when something's unmet, I recognize it like, oh, this is a signal to me. There's something here to pick up. There's something here that I can adjust. I just need to be curious about what this is without judgment. The next way I think about this today is that, oh, yeah, exactly. Something, when I don't have an unmet goal, something is impacting my capacity, and it is not giving up to accept that reality. It's not. And to say and treat myself as if I am giving up, that is unkind, and I recognize that it creates an unsafe inner world for me, where it's really hard to make decisions for my highest good. Like that's where the paralysis came in, is because I didn't accept some extraordinary circumstance, and I didn't accept that it impacted my reality. And where does the blame go when you don't accept that? It just gets I turned it I turned it inward. And that's what made it really hard to like make basic decisions and take action. I also now think that accepting my current capacity, it really does allow me to take actions to restore it. And it's interesting because behind this, like I feel like I can observe sort of an energy and attention to like keep going, like I'm gonna miss something out. I'm gonna miss out on something if I don't. And I think accepting my current capacity has helped me really does help me realize I'm literally not missing anything because my capacity is not there. And it's gonna stay not there until I get with it. Okay? And so I think something else that comes with this thought is it is okay to release what I thought something would look like, because that's where a lot of the challenge was. Like I would be very resistant to accepting my current capacity because my to-do list, my plan, my 3-month plan, my plan for the week, my plan for the day does not match or take my capacity into consideration. And I think a lot of this has required me to release what I thought something would or should look like and accept that, well, this is how it's going to be because this is where my capacity is. And my plan was just that. It's a plan and it's allowed to change. And it doesn't mean that I failed. It means that I have new information about myself and I can make different choices accordingly that serve me. This is a big one that relates to the abuse. I now, when I think about what played a role in my ability to thrive, I recognize that the constant threat of violence, living with the constant threat of violence for 6 years, and experiencing unstable housing for the past year and a half, actually maybe 2.5 years, those are not and have never been and will never be conditions to do great things. Like, I need to be safe. I need to have stable housing. Like, that's shelter, right? Like, in order to do or create anything great, that needs to be on lock. And this is huge because it leads to the title of this episode. I fully underestimated the role safety played in my ability to thrive. And over the past, at this point, like what, 7-8 years, like up until, honestly, even in my adulthood, in general, so up until very recently, actually up until I finally felt safe where I was, which for the very first time was maybe a few months ago. Up until then, I really didn't realize that safety impacted my ability to thrive. And I just kept feeling frustrated with myself. And I judged myself as a self-sabotager. Like, I was like, oh, why can't you get your inner saboteur on lock, Sable? Like, just all of these really harsh judgments of myself that never took my safety into consideration. And it's actually something I already forgive myself for, because the moment I realized it, I realized, I was not able to register or figure this out because I didn't know what safety was. It was only once I felt safe, like on every level, physically, emotionally, like energetically, it was only once I felt safe did my capacity shot all the way up and I was legitimately amazed at what I was able to do. And then I was like, oh, so this is it. Like, this is what I've been needing all along. There's nothing wrong with me. It's that the conditions were never correct. And that's huge, and I also now I also have a different relationship with recognizing my capacity, right? I actually don't judge, and I continue to practice this. So I'll say it's a practice, because it still requires consciousness and choice and effort. It's not like automatic at all. I recognize that my capacity dip is actually a good thing, because it's a signal to me that, oh, life is telling me something is not right, that something is within my realm, within my sphere, that is incompatible with my desires, and it sometimes require a tiny choice. It requires a big choice. It requires something brave, but it's really being able to recognize my capacity dip as there's something up with the conditions is huge for me, is absolutely huge. And it really helps me hold myself with kindness and grace and actually take action that makes me feel like fierce and badass and powerful, right? Because I'm not putting this judgment on myself for it. And it's again something I was only able to accomplish once I finally got to a safe place. Or rather, no. It's something I was only able to gain consciousness of once I was in a safe place, because I slowly, the further and further removed I got from the relationship and like the deeper I got into my healing journey, my capacity to do certain things went up over time. And there's still moments of frustration I had along the way with different dips and turns, having to move yet again, or having whatever conflict that impacted my capacity. This is what's amazing to me, that this was true it's always been true for me, and my perception of it had nothing to do with its powerful reality, right? That my capacity is tied to my conditions, not my worthiness, not my goodness, not my commitment, not my character, not my values. Like, capacity is tied to my condition, and it's always been true. And my judgment has, that's never affected it. It's just the truth that is. And I think I'm grateful that my perception and judgment didn't do jack shit to it. And it's also really powerful, because I'm like, wow, my perception and judgment be out of pocket, and I really need to reel her in to because she creates suffering. And it's, again, a moment of compassion and curiosity. But I'm just there's something that's very freeing of recognizing the only thing that made something as shitty as it was my perception. Because the reality, my perception has never had an impact on the truth of my power. Just my ability to own it and express it and to wield it in my favor, which is something I will do an episode on, because I remember resisting recognizing how powerful I was after I left and the relationship, because I felt so ashamed. I thought, damn, if I've been powerful all this time, how could I have let all this shit happen? And I would think about particularly certain specific violent incidents that even now, it gets better. And I just, I notice the stickiness around it, because I think, how could I where was my power? Why didn't I use it, But that's a whole nother episode. Yeah. And it took, I'm not sure what this note is, but the last thought I have on this is, I kind of accept that it took me, it took me years to figure this out, because, I actually went into this already. Another thought I have about this, about the role safety's played in my ability to thrive, is that, wow, Sable, literally no one hates me. no one who is for me cares about the things I'm judging myself for, and everyone is still living their own life. There's just, it's amazing how, I'm trying to find a way to say this. I don't think like ego-centered. It's just amazing how self-centered all of the negative talk is. And when I say that, I mean it is a force. When the self-talk is negative, I'm literally convinced everything in the world revolves around how awful I am. And it's just not true. And it's just like a fascinating thing to notice, which I have thoughts on, but that's for another day in another video. Now, when I think about this and really accepting the role safety plays in my ability to thrive, I feel free. It feels easy to accept myself. I feel a sense of ease. I feel self-trusting. I feel really, really grateful for my heightened and increasing attunement to external signs, or rather like information about conditions, right? It lets me know that like I trust I will be okay. And there's just something about it that makes me feel like I am awake, walking in the world, and like my body really is such a powerful, my body and how I experience things is such a powerful communicator, which, again, thinking about that, I forgive myself for the ways that I was limited in being able to tap into that, because, I learned how to dissociate from my body at a very young age and practice it a hell of a lot to get to a safe place within the context of the abusive relationship. And so I found hasn't been possible for me to tune into my conditions when when like my nervous system has chosen dissociation as a strategy to be safe. And so it's just like, okay, forgiveness. And it worked. I'm alive. I'm still here. Okay. The narratives that I now hold about the role safety has in my ability to thrive, and particularly from within the context of that abusive relationship, is that it isn't the man, the system, the isms that are keeping me down. It was literally the constant threat of violence and extreme unsafety in my inner world that kept me down. And the threat of multiple types of violence, right? The threat of physical, emotional, financial violence, the list goes on. But those constant threats, that's what kept me down. That's what kept my nervous system hijacked in hypervigilance mode. That's what cut off my connection to my prefrontal cortex, because my amygdala was like, oh no, girl, we are in go mode. And when your brain is in that space, like it shuts down the prefrontal cortex, and it hardwires the neural pathways that work to keep you safe and alive, right? And that's why it takes time, even once leaving the unsafe relationship, there still isn't safety yet. Like, it takes time to really build and find and discover what safety is, in my opinion, even well after leaving the relationship. And And also the narrative that I hold is the toxic shame and distorted the toxic shame that I held and my extremely distorted self-concept in my inner world is what kept me down. Both of these things are important to notice, because if I see that using the narrative of the man and the system and the isms are what keep me down, my ex-wife really benefited from that, because it wasn't the blame for how my body and my nervous system is reacting to the violence I'm experiencing had to go somewhere, right? Because if it wasn't the system, then what would it be? Where else could it be except for her, or except for the inner world that I was living in? And so it's kind of it was the perfect scapegoat. It doesn't mean that these things aren't in place in the world, and within the context of abuse, that's how she sort of weaponized social justice and a certain lens of the world to really skirt accountability for the impact of her violent choices and abusive choices throughout the course of the relationship. I now believe that, yes, Sable, the universe does want me to succeed. I genuinely believe that. I don't think that there these energies trying to keep me down. And there's just so much in literally surviving and transitioning to thriving and healing. I just see so many things working in my favor. And I just have this deep sense of knowing that the universe, the divine, wants me to do well. I also believe that, everything that I experience brings me closer to self-discovery and also to the physical manifestation of my desires. And literally everything, even the things that I've labeled good and even the things that I label bad, I in some way work to support me, to bring me closer to what I desire. And that's not saying I am asking for certain things, that I am grateful that I've experienced violence or abuse. What I am saying is in having peace with my experience and in expressing gratitude with I like and I love myself. I'm so grateful to be me, that I am me. And I just simply recognize how different things in my life have brought me to this moment. Similar to loving and accepting all the versions of Sable that survived and made choices that helped me be alive, I've come to a place where I accept all the things that I've experienced as, events in my life journey, as chapters that have brought me to this moment. And I'm grateful for this moment. And so that's what I believe. I also believe that it is unloving and it is unkind to expect myself to be expansive and to do expansive things when my safety at any level is threatened. Straight up, that is not cool to expect myself to act as if safety don't be mattering, because that shit does. And this one I have to, I really believe it, and I have to remind myself of this belief when I feel disappointment about my plan or something that I wanted to work out. I also believe that my safety will always come first and will trump anything, even my own plans and my own shoulds. And this is really new, and it seems so straightforward, and I think straightforward. And just being a survivor of intimate partner violence, and not only just that, being a human, being a little girl that grew up never knowing what safety was, this is really fucking huge. I think At a time, I used to feel like annoyed by the hassle of all the things I have to do to be safe. And I also, when I was really in that abusive relationship, felt like, because my fear was weaponized against me, my relationship to my safety became distorted, right? Because when I was afraid, I was unsafe. And it almost felt like my need for safety caused problems in the relationship. And it's not almost, like it actually did. And she just sort of like weaponized it to mean I'm this evil person or da 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 da. But now I don't give a fuck about any of that shit. Like, my safety will always come first, like now and forever. And I feel grateful to have consciousness about it. And I also feel grateful that I have the awareness to recognize, like, I have the power, responsibility, and the agency to do whatever I need to do to be safe. And I'm just not fucking sorry for it. And I also know that anyone who has a problem with it, like, thank you for the information, received, noted, and I will exit stage left. Or you will exit stage left from my life, because I'm not about that shit. I also have come to believe, and this one again this is a practice, and I have to remind myself that people and opportunities will flow towards me when I beam out like my true energy. And I believe it because I reflect and I see the ways it's happened in the past, and without me being conscious and aware. And I think having consciousness of this belief now really supports me in surrendering, accepting divine timing, and having peace with the truth of my present, which is honestly can be challenging, especially when, like, I'm still so much of my life is I'm still rebuilding from the damage the abuse has created in multiple areas of my life. And so it's this weird space where I constantly have to practice, like, presence and gratitude in this awkward in between where the things that are true of my life are related to the consequences of abuse. And it's like, I'm grateful to be where I am now, and I can also hold that what I desire is not what is true for my present. And I don't know, it's just something I have to practice and be conscious of. The last thing I believe is, I am responsible for my inner safety and my outer safety. And I'm also responsible for the hard actions and choices that requires. And I'll say this, those actions and choices, they're becoming less and less hard to do. I think I was the recovering people pleaser or codependent, and especially within the context of an abusive relationship and how my fear was weaponized against me, it felt scary to do things to make me feel safe. And I think this is huge, to recognize that I'm responsible to take these actions. And I feel proud of myself for recognizing that, like, I'm taking these actions, and like they're getting, like, it feels like such a win and a milestone to recognize these actions are getting easier and easier to take, which brings me to what I hope for the future. What I hope for myself is the time for me to choose those actions for my safety goes down, like, and it has been, and I just hope that it continues to go that way until it's instant. I also desire for the future that you if you're a survivor or you relate to anything that I've said in this video, that you give yourself grace for what you were unable to do within the context of being and feeling unsafe, right? Because safety is just such a critical human need, and without it, there's like there are actual limitations to what you're able to do, and I want to get you to give yourself grace for that. I also desire is that I continue to ask myself, and for you to continue to ask yourself, what needs to be true about my life so that I can feel safe? And what I love about this question is it's really an inquiry about the conditions that impact your safety, and it turns it outward and pushes away the self-judgment and the self-criticism. And I really hope that you accept whatever answer that question offers you without judgment, and that you let it be expansive, right? I asked myself this question and it stressed me out. I felt uncomfortable and was resisting really answer that question, because when I was thinking about it on a financial level, what I need to feel safe in my life is a lot of money. I was thinking, just being an entrepreneur and thinking about how much money how much runway I need to be able to just pay myself and all that other stuff. I was trying at first to keep the number low and trying to say, do I really need this or do I really need that? And I had to stop myself and be like, Sable, what the fuck do you need to be safe? Period. That's what it is. That's how much it costs. That is the truth. And trying to chip away at that number I just was dishonoring what is true for me. I had to just be honest, what do I need to be safe, and let it be. And then let myself process that, and then let myself think about, okay, how am I going to make this happen? What needs to be true? Allow myself to feel scared of that number, but I had to get it out. So yes, that was episode number 18. I underestimated the role safety played in my ability to thrive. Now, if you related to anything that I said, if you learned something new about yourself, like this episode, drop a comment. I would love to hear and learn how you're relating to this all. And if you think anyone else might relate, share this episode. Thank you so much for joining me today. I can't wait to see you tomorrow. Bye, y'all.